couldn't make it today, I guess. And we get, I guess, in Dan's Ford Expedition, which has press plates on it. By the way, I'll preface this by saying Dan is a 5-time convicted felon. However, they've recently been expunged within the past 6 weeks. Anyway, so I get in Dan's Expedition, and there are blue and red flashing police lights in the grill, and press plates, and he has a dashboard-mounted laptop with satellite internet with the ability to look up people's social security numbers by their license plates, and you know, this GPS system. He's got this whole thing decked out. So we're driving around. We pull up in front of this commercial garage, and he says, "Watch this." And someone pulls in front of us, and while they're pushing their button, he's holding these 2 buttons on his visor. They pull in, the door starts to close, then he pushes the button again, and the garage starts going up. So
I forgot he did that.
Yeah, you did. I really enjoy
it. It's not breaking and entering if you just open the door.
It's reading the code
now,
that they're
because
transmitting.
the factory, in the new cars, they all have the factory garage door open, and you have to program. The way you program is you hit your controller and you hold the 2 buttons. So you just wait till the guy hits his controller, you hold the 2 buttons, and he programs your car to open his door.
So, needless to say,
there is no security in America.
Well, there's no security, but also
none.
these guys sort of skirt the edges of legality in many different ways, but always seem to stay on the right side.
Well, at least I do.
Right, you do. They just a little bit about each one, and then I'll sort of get them started, and it won't be difficult to go from there. Fred Valis used to be the co-chairman of the Weather Underground in New York City. He's now a very hardline right-wing Republican, or libertarian, however you want to say it.
There's nothing to assign it to because nobody's as right-wing as I am.
Okay, you have it right there. He's a Vietnam-era vet. He started out as the head of security for Eastern Airlines at JFK until a former employee of Eastern Airlines, who was an ex-CIA person,
was a CIA guy. He was a passenger.
Hired him to be a private eye. He has killed a man in a bar by shooting him once in the lungs and once in the heart, probably within about...
Double tap.
Double tap. He, along with Dan, have produced segments for Hard Copy, Inside Edition, Fox Files, Fox Undercover,
Current Affair, American Journal.
All of those. Mostly doing undercover work, and using every trick in the trade to get information and basically sell it for a very high price. They both spent, I think, 7 years as paid informants for the Drug Enforcement Administration, 3 years undercover infiltrating the Gambino crime family, 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So they've sort of been involved in both sides of the law, and together I think Dan tapped Heidi Fleiss's phone, which sort of led to...
He is the one who acquired the notorious Heidi tapes.
Right. You guys have been in all kinds of things. You grew up in Flushing, Queens, and Dan is, like I said, a 5-time convicted felon. He just got his PI license.
I've been a PI for 25 years, but I always worked under Fred's license, and I applied for my own license a year ago, and it was finally granted after tons of hearings about whether I was, fit to be, and blah blah blah, and a panel of judges granted me what is called in California a certificate of rehabilitation, which is the precursor to a governor's pardon. You have to get that first. And in my case, I had 5 trips to prison, which if they had taken place in more recent times, I probably would have been doing life under the 3 Sykes law. I was basically a bad kid growing up. I thought nothing of robbing people, taking their cars, kiting checks, any crime where I could get quick cash, I did.
And your more or less professional career began, and you can tell the story if you want, one morning at 19 years old in the White House, where someone asked you to... He was involved in breaking and entering for Mr. Nixon.
I went to Vietnam. I actually.
So I'll shut up and let you guys kind of.
Born and raised right here in the Bay Area. I was born in a duck blind across the Richmond Rod and Gun Club. If anybody knows where that is, it's out by the Back Bay. And my mom was illegally poaching ducks that day, and I was born in a duck blind. And
It's just don't get no better than that.
I grew up in this area, and I foresaw that the Vietnam thing was going to involve a draft, and I decided this was my giant plan, and most of my giant plans in my life have always backfired, was I would avoid Vietnam by joining the Navy. My logic was, the Navy isn't in Vietnam. And I took that one step further and said, not only am I going to join the Navy, I'm going to be a non-combatant. I'll get into an occupation where you don't carry guns. So I became a Navy medic. As soon as I got out of Corps School in San Diego, they said, congratulations, you're now in the Marine Corps. Nobody told me that the Marine Corps drafted their medics out of the Navy. And I went off to Vietnam. But while I was over there, I met a Green Beret guy by the name of Jeff Miller. And Jeff Miller came from a very wealthy family. He had gotten his commission because his parents were politically connected, and they lived at the Balboa Bay Club in Newport Beach. So when I got out of Vietnam, came back, I hung out with Jeff Miller. And he knew what kind of guy I was. He knew I was doing burglaries and stealing cars, and that I could bypass just about any alarm system that there was. And one day he says, how would you like to go on vacation with me? We're gonna travel across the United States, and we'll end up on the East Coast in DC and visit a bunch of national parks. And I'll pick up the tab. I just want somebody to take the trip with me. I said, sure. At the time, I was on parole, my second parole, and I went off on this trip, and finally we're in D.C., and I'm in the Burlington Hotel in D.C., and I hear him on the phone talking to somebody, and he says, oh, cool, great, it's all set, and we'll be there at 7:30 for breakfast. Hangs up the phone, and he says, we're going to go have breakfast at the White House. And I'm thinking to myself, nah, my parole officer just isn't going to believe this. But the next morning we went to the White House, and we met with Murray Chotiner, who was Nixon's, what I referred to later as his West Coast bag man, but he was his campaign manager. And we had breakfast at the staff dining room. It's down in the basement across from the Secret Service offices. And as we're sitting there eating breakfast, casually Murray Chotiner looks at me and says, so Jeff here tells me you're a pretty good burglar. I think we can put your talents to work for a better America. And so they did. And I did 2 burglaries for them, one in the Teamster Union headquarters in Vegas, and another one in an unnamed location that I'm not even going to, where I just placed bugs in a place and took some photographs. And each time I got a rather large chunk of cash in a bag, and that was it. About a year after that, I got arrested for something totally unrelated, and ended up in San Quentin. And while in San Quentin, I received a subpoena from the Watergate Commission, and they were interested in knowing why a convicted felon serving time for burglary in San Quentin was on the White House guest list, and what my connection to Murray Chotiner was. And I was supposed to go and testify before the Watergate Commission, when that very same week, Murray Chotiner got into an automobile accident, and all he had was a broken leg.
Yeah,
and he went to
tragically
Bethesda
and accidentally
Hospital.
cut his head off while shaving.
He went to Bethesda Hospital and died of a blood clot. So, you figure it out.
And I'll tell you something else. Don't ever, ever, ever go to Bethesda Hospital, because everybody who goes in there with a hangnail or a boil drops dead, man. You report to the government. Go back and look. You want to do some research. See how many people in the Clinton administration or other administrations wound up in Bethesda Hospital with some minor thing and dropped dead. That's where they go for the spooks to take care of you.
Yeah, your special medical treatment.
Yeah, you get that special medal. You get the Kool-Aid.
So,
I just want to, just sort of following up on this because it's an investigative journalism class, and a couple of things that they've been involved in would be really interesting to hear about how they do sourcing and investigating, and you know, it's all sort of through these stories and things they've been involved in. But if you guys could sort of first, I mean, one of the most notable things you've been involved in, and would probably be infiltrating the Gambino crime, or being placed there. Can you talk a little bit about how that started and how you're handled?
well, we're gonna back up a little bit to.
And let me just interrupt you one more time. When you sort of tell this story, talk a little, or a lot, as much as you can, about sort of the psychology of
being undercover.
Of being undercover, of dealing with people, and of, you know, I hate to say it, but sort of manipulation.
We were already working a source because we smelled a butt from it. We had fallen into a bunch of basically bank burglars. They were called the Over the Hill Gang. All of them they were all senior citizens, and they did one bank job a year. One bank job a year. They would burgle the banks. This is before banks were open on Saturdays and Sundays. But they would burgle a bank on a Friday night after they closed, and they would bring coolers and bedrolls and everything else, and they'd stay in the bank the whole weekend. They wouldn't touch anything except the safety deposit boxes. They would crack the cans. And they had been doing this for years. I mean, 20 years. And the FBI had a love-hate relationship with them in that they didn't like them because they were burgling the banks, but they did like them because they were opening a safety deposit box. Because, of course, when they open the bank on Monday and they find it, they call the FBI and they come in there. These guys would take all the securities and all the jewels and all the cash. But they would leave all the illegal business records, they would leave all the narcotics, they would leave anything they found illegal, they would leave there. So, of course, nobody needs a warrant because this stuff is laying out. So the FBI was making hundreds of cases as opposed to popping one bank burglar. Well, we had fallen into them because the old geezer who did their alarms dropped dead, and we had been hanging out with the mobsters, and they knew that we knew about electronics. In particular, Dan knew about it. They were recruiting us to do a bank job. And we said, well, you know, we've got no problem busting a bank, but we better cover our ass and go talk to the FBI and tell them what we got. We were in there talking to them about these geezers, and as we're talking, we mentioned Ron the Cigar Sacco in passing, because this guy was also a clerk for Ron's gambling operation. Ron Sacco is the billion-dollar bookie. He was doing $100 million a month in gambling action. Every bet that was placed in the United States was going through him. So anyway, as we're speaking about him, another FBI agent is walking past the door, and he hears Sacco, and he makes a U-turn. He goes, yeah, comes in, he says, forget the geezer bang, we want to talk to you about Sacco, and he put us, they photographed us, opened up a CI file, and put us undercover.
CI is a confidential
in Sacco's organization. And we started off just setting up phone spots for him so that he'd have a table just like this, and around it he'd have 12 people with telephones, and they'd have a big board on the end with all today's games, and Sacco would sit over here, or one of his minions, and they would move the odds around as the bets came in, and because the whole trick is to keep $100,000 on this side and $100,000 on that side. Nobody cares who wins, we take the juice, take the 10%. So anyway, what he would do is he would put these phones in there. So we'd have all these guys in the room. The police were always looking for these boiler rooms. And what he hired us for is so that nobody, including the phone company, would know where these phone lines went. And Danny, with his little telephone expertise, was able to arrange that.
Actually, it wasn't real complicated what I did. The cops couldn't find the joints because when you order a phone line, the dial tone has to go from the central office to a specific location for, you know, to pick up the phone, but it goes over like miles of cable before it gets to that location where it's registered with the phone company as being the address of that phone number. And you can tap into the cable anywhere along that and put it into another house that's not registered with the phone company. And that's what I would do for them. You know, the FBI, when they started having us do this work for the the Gambinos, originally it was just like we were their phone guys, and they could keep, that way they could let them stay in operation but keep track of where the money was flowing. And the mob, because they're just like any other businessman, they hate to have somebody on the payroll that's not really doing anything. So they had us on the payroll as their phone guys, but they thought, well, you know, we're paying you $1,500 a week. When you get a chance, can you make this delivery over to such and such a place, or can you go here and pick up some money?
Well, this guy owes us some money. Why don't you go
eventually
have a talk with him?
we became their bagmen, and we became their collectors, and we got to know more and more people. And what was originally going to be like probably, we thought, a 90-day operation, ran into, for me, 3.5 years, and for Fred, about 4.5 years.
Well, we were so successful in hiding their phones that Danny, we put one in the produce section of LA, a boiler room. All produce sections in all cities are the same. There are rows and rows of little bay doors, you know, that go in. It's like a rabbit warren. There are tunnels and crawlways. And this guy goes and he trains a rack that we bought to come to a whistle. And we went to one end of the block with all these connected things, and I go to the other end, I blow the whistle, and he tied a string to it. The rack went all through the building, all over the damn place, came out the other end, and then we used that string to pull a telephone wire through. And the phone company went absolutely berserk trying to figure out where this, or how it even got there.
Constantly trying to find new locations that the cops couldn't find. And I was always looking in the paper for buildings for rent. And one day we see this ad, and it was right after the fall of the Soviet Union. And the Russians were renting out space in the embassy.
Yeah, right over in San
In the
Francisco.
former Soviet embassy, which was now the Russian embassy. We thought, man, we could go in there and put a bookie joint in there, because then the cops couldn't even come in.
It's Soviet territory. They can't even come in there.
You know.
So we go to the FBI. We go, we got the best place. We can put the bookies right in the Soviet. He goes, are you nuts? Are you out of your
But
mind?
the best story is the guy that was renting us the property had a really good sense of humor. He goes in, and Fred's talking to him. His name was like Sergey or something. And he says, well, we can do this. I can rent you the place. But first you have to do us a favor. First, you must help us kill moose and squirrel. And then he goes, funny, yeah?
This is a good joke, yes? Yeah, Boris, it's a real slap. I almost peed myself. I couldn't believe it. He looked just like the cartoon guy, too.
To get into how I got started in doing any of this stuff was, obviously I was a crook. I was in prison. I went in and out of prison 5 different times. The last stint that I was doing was for interstate transportation and stolen motor vehicles and cashing government checks, and I got sent to Terminal Island. This was almost 30 years ago. I'm an old fart. I'm 2 years shy of 60.
Terminal Island?
Terminal Island.
That's the reason they call it that.
Not the Terminal Island here, the Terminal Island down in Los Angeles, which was a federal prison down here, and I was doing my time, and I was the editor of the prison newspaper, and also spent my time in the law library because I felt that a petition for writ of habeas corpus a week was a good exercise. Never really feeling that any one of these petitions was going to actually be granted, but I was always just poring over the law books looking for a loophole, and I filed many of those petitions. And then one day, which was coincidentally the same day I was supposed to go before the parole board, I get a call into the warden's office, and he says, you have a telephone call from the court clerk. And he puts me on the phone with the court clerk, and he says, yeah, the judge has granted your habeas corpus petition. The order is being prepared, and it's on its way over to the prison. You're going to be released this afternoon. And I'm thinking, really? And he says, yeah, really, your case has been set aside, pending the appeal of the federal government to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So I go back and start packing up everything in my cell. I don't tell the warden what the conversation was about, and I go to my parole hearing, knowing that no matter what happens in there, I'm going home in about 3 hours. And so the guys, you know, this panel of idiots is looking through the paperwork, and they go, Mr. Hanks, we see you've been here for 22 months. To which I responded, wow, 22 months already. Well, you know how time flies when you're having fun. And they didn't see the humor in that. But shortly after that, I got released, and I was thrown out on the street with $103 in my pocket. I had $3 on the book, and they give you like $100 and a bus ticket. And no prospects, no jobs, no nothing. And while I was in there, I had met a kid who had worked for Jefferson Starship. And he was doing time for smuggling cocaine. You guys are not old enough to remember when the guys that had been involved with several southern rock bands had gotten cocaine smuggling business. And he gave me Grace Slick's phone number. He said, you can stay at the Starship House up in San Francisco when you get out. So I did. And I went up to Fulton Street and saw Grace Slick, and she gave me a room to stay in. And the next day I started looking through newspapers for a job, and I saw this ad that said, wanted, private investigator, no experience necessary, little training. And I went and saw a guy named Jack Emmendorf. And I told him, I just got out of prison yesterday, and this is what I was in there for, and this is what I did, you know, burglaries, wiretaps, blah, blah. He went, you're my guy. You know, he hired me on the it takes one to know one basis.
I had just come out here from New York, and I was already a private investigator in New York. I had been undercover once already with, you guys won't even know what it is, it's called the BNDD. That's what the DEA used to be before 1976. It was called the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. And I busted a heroin ring and I arranged smuggling automatic weapons. Are you ready for this? In Starship Enterprise toys from Taiwan. So, I had Captain Kirk and his Uzi. So, but I had come out here, and I had gone to work for Jack just until my license. It takes about 6 months to process a PI license in California. So I had needed a job, so I went to work for him, and they give me this schmuck to train. And from the first second I laid eyes on him, I said, I do not like this asshole. All right? I got this ex-felon California clown that I'm going to have to train, because I have total disdain for anything California. And you know, so for the first couple of days I'm riding with him, but then all of a sudden we started to click. And when Jack Emmendorf hired me, he said, well, what do you, typical bullshit interview, well, Mr. Valis, what do you think your prospects are? What are you going to be doing in 5 years? I said, well, Jack, that's not really a fair question. Why don't you ask me what I'm going to do next year? I'm 28 years old. He says, okay, what are you going to do next year? I said, by next year, I've stolen your 3 biggest clients, half your crew, and I'll have my own agency. He says, okay, you're hired. Well, it didn't take a year. It took about 8 months. And I took PG&E, State Farm, and
the city and county of
San Francisco, which investigates all the police officers and sheriffs. How nifty. Right?
So,
and took Dan with me when I left. And
you had an ex-felon investigating cops. What a great job. Anyway, I hooked up with Freddie, and we started an agency in Marin, called Backstreet Investigations. And now it's about 4 years after we started, or four months after we started the agency, and about 1 year after I got out of prison, and I get this paper from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals saying that the Ninth Circuit is reversing the case. And pending appeal to the United States Supreme Court, you have to go back to prison. And they said that I would receive notification from the Bureau of Prisons on when and where to report. So I filed my appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court, which, by the way, I won a few months later, about 5 months later. and was re-released. But in the meantime, I took my little court order and drove out to Pleasanton where they told me to report, and I showed up at the gate. The guard says, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, I got a surrender order here from the Bureau of Prisons." The guard
Speak
says,
up for the back.
"There's got to be a mistake." I said, "What do you mean there's got to be a mistake?" He says, "Well, this is a woman's prison." To which I responded, "And the problem is?" And they put me on the Group W bench, and they got the warden, and she came and looked at my paperwork, and she said, "Well, just stay here. I'll find out where you got to really surrender." And she's gone for about an hour and a half, and she comes back and says, "Well, I called the Bureau in D.C., and apparently there isn't a mistake. They have decided to turn Pleasanton, a proper name, into a co-ed prison. And you're our first male prisoner."
And the only male prisoner for about 3 months.
Yeah, for about 3 months I was the only male prisoner. So, having been involved in electronics, this is 25 years ago, this is about 23 years ago.
General population?
General population, because they couldn't segregate you. What they did, Pleasanton is actually laid out like a peace sign. It's got these 3 buildings coming out from the center core, and each building houses, they house like 300 people, the cells. They had to empty out the center wing and have everybody else go in the outside cells, and I had the center wing to myself. But during the day, you were on the yard together, you were, whatever. And I was like, now I knew how women felt. I was now fresh meat on the yard. I saw him first, he was mine. And they gave me a job working, I love this. At the time, my conviction was for, among the list of things they had me in for, one of them was for wiretapping.
Wiretapping who? I just want to ask you.
That's the one he's not talking about.
That was a judge in Orange County. I got a lawyer down there hired me to put a tap on it.
Is there any wonder how he's been in prison so many times he wiretaps a judge?
Why has he been in prison and you haven't?
Because I'm smarter. I'm 4 times the criminal he is. The difference between Dan and I is Dan has always thought when he was a youngster that, oh, they won't catch me. I always thought if you give them the slightest chance, they will.
And he was right. They will catch you.
And they only have to win once. You can win 1,000 times. They only have to win once.
Yeah.
I had stolen like 400 cars before I was 18. In New York, you can't drive till you're 18. How the hell are you going to get paid without a car?
I won't tell him the name. But his crime partner in car thievery
and other things. Knock over liquor stores, jewelry stores.
Guess what he does today? He's a U.S. Marshal. 33
years a U.S. Marshal.
Obviously his criminal past didn't bother him getting into law enforcement.
Yeah, well, that's because once again he didn't
anyway,
get
they stuck me in there, and I ran the electronics shop, doing telephone repair and that's.
You're a wiretapper. You could be the phone guy.
And so they make me the phone guy, and but I really had a booming business building vibrators for the girls. I was selling those like hotcakes. Anyway, I got out of there. I got out of there, and I went back to work with Fred, and we were doing mostly workers' comp, which is basically surveillance. You have a couple of different kinds of workers' comp investigations.
Yeah, but I've seen more miracles than Jesus Christ. I can tell you right now.
But most of the cases are based on surveillance. You get a case that they suspect the guy isn't as injured as he claims he is, and you're going to go out and watch him for 3 days, and maybe if you get lucky during that 3 days, he goes out and does some heavy physical activity, and you get it on. In those days, you get it on film. Today, they shoot on video, but in those days, we shot on 16mm Bolex cameras with only 100 feet of film, which gave you 3.5 minutes. Meant you had to pick
in 16-second
and
bits.
Choose your shot. You had to get him when he was lifting up that, box that he said he couldn't lift in that short time. And you had to be able to drive a car, follow a guy, and reach over with one hand and thread a Bolex camera. It was a little tougher than it is today, where we have video cameras that can zoom in from thousands of feet away, and you're not using lenses that are this long, and you have to throw a pillow on the hood of the car and throw it over the hood to get your shot. Anyway, we did that, and it got boring.
Very quickly it got boring, and independently of each other.
We both got the same idea at the same time.
We had both seen in Playboy magazine this thing, Bounty Hunters for a Better America, you know, and that the DEA was paying cash rewards for drugs. And independently of it, without each other knowing, we both went to the DEA. So basically what wound up happening is very quickly we compared notes, because once I got signed on, I go to him, he goes, well, I'm already signed on, I was going to come tell you. And we went into the rock and roll industry, we went undercover on Bill Graham. And all of the music operations, we worked for Bill and Jerry Pompili for years. And we traveled with all the bands, and we busted boxcar loads of cocaine. And we wouldn't even touch a deal if it was less than 10 kilos. And the feds were paying us at that time $2,000 a kilo and $1,000 a warm body in cash. But better than that is if you went and sold the drugs, because the government's got warehouses full of drugs you can sell that they grab from other people. And it's every bit as much of a crime to buy the drugs as it is to sell it. The difference is, if I'm buying drugs from you and you come with your $300,000 and we pop you, they give us 25% of the $300,000 right then. No waiting for conviction or anything else. Here's yours, here's mine, here's yours. And this is the best kind of money there is, because it's tax-free money. You don't even have to declare it. There's actually a federal code that says you can't. The reason you can't declare it is because in the trial process, it would leave a paper trail. It is paid in cash to a code name or a code number. They don't even have a record of who it was paid to. So we're rolling in cash.
Yeah,
and then we're going, well, you know, we had cleaned out the whole Bay Area of everybody we knew that was big-time dealers, so we took our show on the road and we went to D.C. and Baltimore and New York and, you know, just all over the place, being drug dealers for a better America. We go, this is a wonderful thing. You get to be a drug dealer with no possibility of being busted.
Let me ask you a question. You're doing this, you're going in and you're meeting people and you're befriending people. Well, what's that like? How the hell are you doing that? You're going in and it's like,
this is exactly why. This is exactly why the police don't let anybody work undercover for more than sometimes 1 year, sometimes 2, depending on the department. Because you will run into people that you genuinely like. And you do get these guilty things like, you know you're going to pop this guy down the road. He's as good as gone right now, all right? But you have to, it takes an individual to be able to do this, where you have to go in a predatory mode. Yeah, they're nice people, but they're pond scum. Half my grammar school class is dead from drug overdoses. Half of them, all right? These people are predators. You have to be more predatory. I don't care how nice they are. You're nothing more to me than a dollar sign. I couldn't care less if your granny's dying of cancer and your kids have AIDS. I don't care why you need the money. You're nothing to me than a price tag.
Oh, with the government, though.
Feel free to ask questions, Brian.
Oh yeah, jump in anytime you want.
The government's motivation for going after drug dealers has nothing to do with it's bad for you.
Oh, it's a money-making business.
It has to do with the money. The reason they're not aggressive against pot is because the finest pot in the world is grown here in California.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that the money is going to go outside of the U.S. economy.
Yeah, pot's not like I was.
The money's going to stay right here in the U.S. economy. Cocaine, on the other hand,
that money goes overseas. We can't have that.
That is money that is leaving the U.S. economy, and that's what the real war on drugs is about. It's about money leaving the country. The fact that people are dying from drugs, they could care less about. They just don't like you spending your money overseas on drugs.
Yeah, and you know, the other domestic drug that we have here, and notwithstanding the designer drugs they have now, but LSD, and there's not actually any LSD in the LSD now. But I mean, you know, back when I was a sky pilot, I mean, you know, I'd do 5 for breakfast, 4 for lunch, 3 more for dinner, and kick it with some amphetamine to get the creatures going. All right, but the
what are creatures?
you know, you get the walls melting and things peeking at you in your peripheral vision, like you'd be talking and you go, never mind. I spent 4 hours in front of a chandelier store one time in the snow, And I turned around and looked in the mirror, and I had this wedding cake on top of my head, and I didn't even know it was cold out. It's a wonderful drug. It's a great learning experience.
I have a question.
Sure.
It sounds like you guys are great investigators, and a lot of the things that we're doing, they're investigating kind of like corporate criminals, where it's really hard to get a trail and get information. Do you know kind of what we're talking about?
Yeah, you have
No,
to crack their
that's-
computers.
First of all, not for that.
Give them any tips that are like legal?
Yeah, first of all, let me tell you what it is. I don't care what the crime is, and I don't care, and it doesn't make any difference. In this case, we're talking with an investigative journalist. Private investigators, police investigators, investigative journalists, all use the same tools to get the information they want. It's one of the reasons why the state of California recognizes being an investigative journalist as one of the requirements for getting a PI license.
Your hours working as an investigative journalist will
Because the
qualify for a
techniques are
PI
the same.
license.
The fact is that whatever the story is, it all starts with observation. And then you pick the most vulnerable person to approach to get inside the loop. When we were doing Fox Undercover, we worked so many diverse cases. We had a baby selling ring out of Tijuana that was phony adoption.
Yeah, you could order a baby like you'd order a pizza. You go to this adoption agency and say, "Oh, I'm looking for a little boy," and
We
they
had
would
gun
go to
runners.
Mexico, kidnap him, bring him back, and then they had an attorney and an adoption agency working together. They'd falsify the papers, and we tracked those babies all over the country, hundreds of them.
We had one great white-collar crime. It was a multi-million-dollar crime. It was Medi-Cal fraud. And what was happening in the Medi-Cal fraud case was these guys, fresh out of medical school, they just put their shingle up, last week, would go and they would realize that if somebody was on, Medi-Cal or they had that little blue card, that was a gold mine to rack up billing to the state of California, to the federal government. Almost all, in fact, not almost all women in California who have children who are on welfare have a Medi-Cal card. They give it to them as part of the welfare. So what they would do is they would send out these scouters to go find women in poor neighborhoods. They'd be sitting at a bus stop
Or in the front
and
stairs.
they would
or
ask
whatever.
them, they're usually Spanish speakers, they would ask them, are you on Medi-Cal? And they say, oh yeah. I'll give you $10 if you come with me.
And take an exam.
And they would come here, and all that doctor wanted to do was open up a file and print their card. Now, how do you get inside that organization? You get tipped off that it's happening, but how do you get inside? You get inside the same way that the cappers did. They approached women on the streets and said, well, I'll give you $10. We approached the same women and said, tell you what, we're going to give you $500. All we want you to do is sit on this bus bench, wait till somebody approaches you, and go with them. The only difference is they're wearing a camera.
We give them a bad cam.
And it's the
Is it
same
dangerous
thing.
for them? Probably not.
They're
Certainly
never
not
going to
be
get the
too
physical
dangerous
exam
because we're going
because
to be right there with them.
the doctor isn't concerned.
We've got them all under
with that.
surveillance.
But you always approach somebody on the inside.
Who was
Or
your
the-
client in that?
That was
Fox
Fox
Undercover.
Fox Undercover. And you also have to get somebody who's indigenous to the area that's willing to work with you. In this particular case, we stole good investigative reporters from other people. I went to Telemundo and found a guy named Alfredo Romero.
Who we knew because
Fluent-
his brother used to work at Hard Copy with
fluent
us.
Spanish speaker, fluent English speaker, great cameraman, great surveillance, good instincts. And we stole him from Telemundo and had him come to work for us because he could work the streets. He was nominated for 2 Emmys in Los Angeles last year. He did a thing called Billionaire Drug Lords out of Tijuana.
And Coyote Commandos.
And the Coyote Commandos. The other person was a black kid who was a rapper out of South Central LA, and had done some work, gotten approached by Geraldo Rivera. Geraldo was doing the same thing. He approached a kid who was in the inner city to go out and get stories for him. You know, you get a local to help you out, but it doesn't make any difference if it's all these, you know, sleazy inner city stories. It's the same thing with corporate crime. If it's like you're talking about bad doctors in hospitals, you're always going to find one nurse that wants to give them up and has always wanted to give them up.
Or it's disgruntled.
Or you're going to find a disgruntled employee. You're going to find.
Dan and I
those
have two
people.
different skill sets over the last 10 years now. Dan mostly is chained to his office computer because he runs all the information for us, and I'm out in the field on the streets. Dan's skill set is that he can ferret out the slightest little nuance. Everybody has access to the databases, everybody in the business, everybody has Merlin and DBT and all the rest of them. Not everybody knows how to work them. There is a whole slew of information that can be gotten from these things by correlating and moving stuff around, and it's something he's learned over the years. I work on the streets, and I can tell you my chief skill set is to be able to walk into a public place, a bar, a restaurant, I don't care where, a synagogue, a church, it doesn't matter. To be able to walk, or the boardroom at PG&E, to be able to walk in cold, engage somebody in a conversation, and within 5 to 10 minutes instill trust in them, that they feel that they are able to tell me things that they know they should not tell any living human being. And I've been doing it for years and years and years. And it's all about manipulating body language, it's all about spatial relationships, it's all about knowing something about them when they start. If you're, let's say you're doing a story on battered women, and what happens with these guys who get arrested and they're out and they've got restraining orders and everything. And you want the guy to tell you what happened, but he doesn't want to talk about it. You run into him wherever, the library, cocktail lounge, on the corner, it doesn't matter. And what you do is you tell him the story about your miserable wife and how she's done all this stuff to you, and you've been in and out of jail and you just got out. Human beings always want to one-up you. When you tell him that story, he is immediately going to tell you, oh yeah, that's nothing. Let me tell you about that bitch I live with. But you have to instill that trust very, very quickly. You'll get child molesters will tell you what they're doing. They want to tell. People want to tell someone. And if you're a stranger, you're from out of town, you're leaving town tomorrow, you have some sort of a connection where you have the same sort of an experience or the same, where they think that you will understand, they will tell you.
So what kind of body language do you employ? Does it change with who you're with?
Yeah, there's no way to teach that.
Okay.
There's really no way to teach that. That's something that you learn over. I've been doing what I do since I was 19. I'm 55.
One thing you never ever do, that every one of you in here are doing right now, is you never take notes.
Oh yeah, you pull out a piece of paper in front of these people, they will clam up so fast you won't know what happened. Or a tape recorder is even worse.
And you never have a reporter's notebook with you. What you do is you go and you get yourself a matchbook. And if you take all the matches out, you can put a tiny pad of paper in the matchbook. And you can learn to take notes very, very small. When I was working with the...
No, if the guy gives you a phone number and address, you don't scribble it on the matchbook. Excuse me, I gotta take a leak, I'll be right back. You go in. While you can still remember, you write the damn thing down.
But you learn how to memorize stuff, and you learn how to take the notes in whatever way you can.
And you don't have to put it in long-form memory. It's just going to be in short-term memory. You can forget it immediately after you write it down.
Immediately when you're away from the person, then while it's still fresh in your mind, you commit it to either tape or that. But you never do anything that makes the person, and I don't care whether it's a gun or drug dealer on the street or whatever the story is, that makes them feel that you're so interested that you're writing something down about what they're saying. You never come off as a reporter. I'm sure that there's some situations where you got to say, you know, I'd like to ask you a few questions on the record I'm with so-and-so. Maybe you do that after.
He just thought of a couple.
You know, but for the most part, if you actually want to get the real story, you have to get it in a context where they don't
Yeah, but not
know
only that, you can do that afterwards. There are times when you're going to have to go on the record and get a direct quote.
No, you guys have to
Actually,
understand,
we
everybody,
always
you can't we can't misrepresent ourselves.
I understand perfectly, but if I don't say who I am, I'm not representing the goddamn thing.
See,
If I'm some schmuck in the bar and haven't told them what I do, I'm not misrepresenting
But then,
anything.
see, this is gaining the information. I'm not talking about stuff that's going on in the record. It's called an investigative
Yes.
tool, investigative
Once you've
lead.
gotten all this information surreptitiously, then you go out and you research it. Now you find where it is in the real world. Now you go back and say, you remember when you talked to me last week? Well, I'm a reporter with such, and what I'd like is some comments about this stuff. Now, what is this guy going to do?
Sue you?
Yeah.
Put in line.
You know what you do. See,
Dick Clark told me you're nobody in this town till you've been sued by a major studio.
What you do is you don't use this to, like, you're not going to quote him in your story. What you're going to do is you're going to develop that person. Now you're going to go back and develop that person as your source.
Yeah.
To
And
go
when
in
I'm,
and get you more information.
when I'm
And
talking
you're going
about
to
it,
tell him why it's going to be his benefit.
that's right.
You got to convince him that
You got to
he's
get out in
doing
front of
the
this
right
story.
thing.
We're going to do it anyway, so you better get out in front of it and get your end of it on. Because you're going to look like shit if it's done without your input.
I'm going to tell you something. Ethics are only as good as the person who's behind
No,
it.
ethics are a quantum thing, all right? The same, it all operates in quantum. It operates in quantum because what happens is that, you know, oh, well, you did this and it was a little unethical and you really shouldn't have done that. But you know what? It doesn't exist until somebody measures it, just like anything quantum, right?
I'm gonna,
This is why I have no criminal record, because I committed no crimes. Why? They were never measured. They don't exist until they're measured. Does the tree make a sound in the forest? No, it does not, unless there's somebody there to hear it.
But here's the thing, the world sort of we operate in, it has been measured. We have certain standard codes of ethics, standards and practices.
You're killing me here.
I know, but that's, look, what's the difference between what we do and what you do?
well, let me ask you, who's there to enforce those ethics when somebody violates them? I'm going to give you a story, a case.
Now, I want to stay on this debate. You're going to story yourself for a minute.
10 years ago,
I'll leave it to the moderator.
I tapped Heidi Fleiss's phone. I did it for money.
Gee, you think?
What had happened is I had been working for Hard Copy, and I had Heidi under surveillance for about a year, and had been gathering a lot of great information. And one day I get called into Peter Brennan's office. Peter Brennan was executive producer of Hard Copy. He created Current Affair, and now he's retired because he created a little thing called Judge Judy, and doesn't have to work anymore. But I get called into his office, and all these executives from Paramount Pictures in there, and they said, "We understand you're investigating Heidi Fleiss for a segment on Hard Copy." And I said, "Yes, we are." They said, "We need all your notes, we need all your photos, we need all your tape recordings.
And kill the story.
Kill the story. We will not be doing a story at Paramount Pictures Hard Copy."
Well, they were all
on
the
Heidi
clients.
Fleiss.
Of course they don't want a story on it.
So they killed the story. But shortly thereafter, I ended up getting fired from Hard Copy because of a conflict. I had produced a special for Dick Clark, and they didn't like. They thought, that I should have brought them the story before I took it to Dick Clark for a television special. In any event, I get fired. I'm out of work for about 5 months, and I get approached by Heidi Fleiss's direct competition, a guy named Ron Naj. And
Ivan Nagy, who's he kidding?
and he asked me to tap Heidi's phones for the sole purpose of finding out who her clients were, so they could steal her client list. So I do. He paid me a nice chunk of cash to do it, and I do. And for the first couple of weeks, I'm just going and picking up the tapes and going over and delivering them to him and get the thing, and I'm not listening to them. But one day I pick up one of the tapes and I stick it into my cassette player on the way over to him, and I go, "Holy shit! This is some great stuff." Because, she had every major monkey muck in Hollywood on her client list, and the tapes got better and better. So I I started making copies of them before giving them to them live. Well then, Sean Huber, reporter with the Los Angeles Times, does this little tiny piece about the Hollywood Madam. And it's just on the surface, a couple of paragraphs. And I thought, well, maybe there might be a buck in it if I call her up and tell her what I know. So I call her. And the Los Angeles Times, which does not pay sources, paid me $4,000 to get a listen to the Heidi tapes. I let Sean Huber listen to those tapes on the condition that I never be mentioned as a source. That was the condition. The very first big spread that she did, after agreeing to that, to listen to these tapes, was like 2 full pages wide, broke the whole story, started the whole feeding frenzy. The last paragraph was, the man with the tapes. She named her source, a woman who promised me that I would not be named in exchange for her being able to use these tapes. Named me in the article.
That's because you didn't use.
Now, where were her ethics? Yeah.
Not off the record. This is deep background.
Well, she knew exactly what I meant.
She's scum. She's blonde.
You know.
She's on my list of things to do when they tell me I have terminal cancer.
You know.
I have a question. It kind of leads back to your debate, and that is motive and motivation. Your motives and motivation, obviously, money.
Oh, mine's not money.
Then what do you, so.
My
expound on that,
motivation
expound on that.
is, unless you're doing something dangerous, you're not even alive. You're not even alive. If you're not walking on the edge of the razor, you might as well just go get a job selling donuts at Winchell's, all right? Because the only time you're really alive is when you're doing something dangerous. That's when time slows down. That's when you see the things with diamond crystal clarity of what's really important, instead of all this bullshit around that they think is important.
Let me tell you something.
Because, and this is the capital of bullshit right here. All right, this town here is the bullshit capital of the world. Because they have no clue what the real world is about in Berkeley. None. None. In my jungle, they're just another asshole, I can tell you right now.
Does that,
There is-
but does that motivation of being on the edge, are you on a side?
Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes the game is its own reward. I don't much care who wins. I'm always interested in making money, but it's not the motivation. The money is what enables me to stay in the game.
I do what I do for exactly that, for the thrill of it. Once I started doing investigations 25 years ago, for the exception of the Heidi tapes, I haven't done any crimes in 25 years. But I haven't changed a thing in 25 years. I get to play the game every day. I just play it for a different team, that's all.
And having said that, you know, he hasn't committed a crime in 25 years, but I've had to get him out of the slammer about a dozen times over in 25 years, only because every time he gets stopped, they run his rap sheet and they hook him up and take him in. Not that he's done anything,
My
he
house
just said that's
my house
it.
got raided by federal agents a year ago. They tossed the whole joint because they made a mistake. Yeah, very quick side story. I'm sitting at home, working on my computer, doing searches for the news media stuff. I work mainly doing searches today for the British tabloids. Mail on Sunday, the Evening Standard, the Ireland Sunday Times, all that. I track people down. There's a breaking story, and you get half a dozen names involved in that story, and you want to know where they are so you can go interview them.
And you want to know people that know them.
Or you want to know people that know
Like we
them.
can run the
They're
address
all
and give you
person.
everybody that's lived with them. We
So
can
what
run a
tools-
name, give you everybody that's
Tell us
lived
what
with them for the
tools,
last 10 years.
databases you use
Well,
specifically.
first of all, every news agency can have access to auto track. The only difference is that they get truncated access to auto track. A licensed private investigator gets full access, and I can analyze what they need to know, and without giving them the identifiers that they're not supposed to have, I can tell them what the bottom line is, what they want to know. I can say, oh yeah, they got an aunt that lives in Poughkeepsie. They got this guy, you know. I can tell them the people they need to go see, to interview. And I can do it very quickly. On my website, which is BritishAmericanNews.com, I got a motto there that says, it ain't news tomorrow, it's history. If if you're trying to find a guy that's involved in the story, call me. I'll find him for you in
Because
20
it
minutes.
only matters if you're first.
And
You must be first for it to be news, because otherwise it's just.
The other thing is I have written in stone ethics, because I wouldn't be in the business too much longer if I sold the story to more than one newspaper. The first one that calls me and has a request for a specific person, they're working at a specific story, that's the person that I work with for the story. The Mail on Sunday consistently is the first. They consistently pay very well too. They'll say, I need an exclusive on this story. What do you want for it to be an exclusive? They'll offer, make sure I
For
can sell it
example.
to you. Do you remember about a year ago a weapons inspector, British weapons inspector, committed suicide?
Yeah.
Okay. That weapons inspector was dating his interpreter, who had trained at the Language Institute in Carmel. And her name is Mai Pedersen. Mai Pedersen was actually a CIA spy.
She's an active duty military.
She's active duty military. He was having an affair with her. She was involved with the Baha'i faith and had kind of used that as a way to like develop a relationship with him. But actually she was under the direction of the CIA to get close to him and find out, because they thought his politics were a little wishy-washy and they wanted to get close to him. When the British media started realizing that this guy had this relationship with this woman, the number one thing is, where do we find Mai Pedersen?
They wanted to talk to her.
And we want to talk to
They
her.
want to see if they can get an interview.
I found her in 15 minutes. They had transferred her to Montgomery, Alabama.
Yeah. To the sport school.
To the base down in Montgomery, Alabama, the Air Force base. And I knew from the paper trail of her credit card information and all that.
So how are you getting access to that?
Well, what they did wound up doing that, or the databases, he located it down there, because every
Yeah,
credit
credit
card.
These are
These are
subscribers.
subscriber databases.
It's not over the web.
They're
I mean, they're over the web, but it's
they're
not open to
subscription
public.
databases, but like every subscription database, the most popular one for the news media, of course, is Nexus Lexis. All of them have disclaimers that this information is, for your investigative purposes. As journalists, you get access, or as private investigators, you get access. If I was still a crook, I could be stealing identities and racking up your credit cards left and right, because I get that information. I get full Social Security numbers, dates of birth, mother's maiden name, but I have access to that. I have to use a certain amount of discretion on what I pass on.
Because you
need
get
to know.
different access as a PI than you do
Yes.
as
Oh,
a
absolutely.
reporter.
Yes.
You'll notice that
In order to subscribe to these databases, you have to show your PI license?
you have to show your
Not
PI.
only do you have to show it,
They do a background
but like it
check.
comes up for renewal. My license comes up for renewal in June of '05. So I just renewed it. When that license came up for renewal, I had to send them a new copy of my renewed license, and they called the BSIS in Sacramento to verify
They
that it wasn't a
verify
bullshit
that you're
license.
still, if you have a news media access, to get a news media access, you have to be working for a major news agency.
Approved news. They haven't
And when
looked at the
you do-
First Amendment.
And when you do work for them, and you go online, you don't get full access. You get truncated Social Security numbers.
No,
You
we
know,
don't.
you get
full.
You get full
We
now.
get full. The only thing we don't get are criminal records. Do you guys get those?
You
Yeah.
get criminal records. Yeah.
We don't get, but I get full socials. I get everything that you.
See,
put
the other
down
thing.
there.
The other thing is, I also have backdoor sources, and the backdoor sources that I have, and you develop these. First of all, as a private investigator, and this is another thing. If
I
you want
get
to
toll
develop,
records also.
if you want to get,
Yeah, if I want to see
get
everybody you
sources.
called for the last 3 months on long
Like a pen
distance.
register?
Oh, no, we get the actual numbers and we get the actual bill.
If you want
The
to,
actual
through
phone
these
bill.
databases?
no, not through those
There's a
databases.
company that-
But this is the whole thing. My thing is gathering. My business that I have is gathering information for people. So I've developed a lot of sources, and yeah, you were asking how you develop these sources. Well, for private investigation, everywhere in the country, at least 4 or 5 times a year. There'll be conventions, security and investigation. This weekend there's a convention in Las Vegas for, on forensic science. We got Dr. Bodden and some of those guys from, they always see on CSI type stuff lecturing here. You go to these conventions, you network with other investigators, and you find out who they're using for this or who they're.
And you'll say something like, I lost my phone source, man. You got one. Oh yeah, I got this good guy.
To get a phone source, it's first of all, telephone company security. They have their own internal security. Those guys are all ex-cops and ex-PIs. They go to these conventions too, and they're always willing to take a buck to get you in, as long as they know it's for a legitimate purpose. You're not giving some stalker the. They consider the news media.
You're not a stalker.
You're not a stalker. It's not going to lead back to causing danger to the person.
Yeah, well, you're not going to commit a crime with it. You're not going to steal the guy's identity. You're not going to.
The difference is, as a private individual, I don't have bureaucratic red tape to go through to get the information I want to get. I can get.
Having just a PI be one of your sources and say, run this guy for me.
A lot of people do that.
A lot of people
do that. That's how you get.
Yeah. We've got 30 or 40 reporters that use us on a regular basis. And they don't use our...
And pay you what?
They pay us our bill.
How much do you put for it?
Depends what we do, doesn't it?
Okay, I'll give you what my price rate is. My price rate is. If you want me to run what's a profile search. And have you seen profile searches from Autocrat?
Yeah.
So how they go. They link every property they own, every person that lived at the same place. I charge $110 for profile searches. Profile searches cost like $24. But the difference is, I'm sitting there all the time. I'll do it for you in seconds.
Right.
I'll do it while you're out in the field. Can you run this guy? If you want to run a license plate, it costs me $4 to run a license plate, California DMV. And once you have an account with California DMV, you get the background check, you have an account with all of them. All 50 states.
Yeah.
Because what happens is California is connected to all the other states, and they will run it. They have an increased price for different states, have the different prices. What I do is I charge $35 because I'm doing it right now.
And 55 if it's after business hours.
And if it's after business hours, if you're calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're
Then
in
it's
the wrong
only
place.
55.
It's that. But the other thing is most news agencies only have requester codes for verbal requests during business hours, 9 to 5. You ever seen a murder that takes place during business hours? It doesn't happen. I get calls in the middle of the night. I need you to run this plate. I need you to run it. That's the other thing for my line of business. There's no such thing as 9 to 5. I answer the phone 24 hours a day, and I will get up and do the runs right then and there, and that's why I make good money at it. The business. I remember when the space shuttle blew up. I got called at 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, we need to know the home addresses of every one of the astronauts. And we need to know the home addresses and phone numbers of all the astronauts, survivors from the last shuttle explosion. Because they wanted to do something like, oh, here's somebody who would know how what she's going through, But reporters are aggressive. When the World Trade Center fell down, I was months tracking down people who were relatives of survivors and there was a lot of stories. There was amazing stories that came out of that. You get major disasters, you're going to get a lot of searches that people want real quick. The average person that's watching television and they see a high-speed chase, which seems to be like regular entertainment in Los Angeles television, and then they follow the guy and he drives to his own house. Never seems to be amazed that there are already news trucks there. What are they, psychic? They knew where he lived? How do they think you get this stuff?
Yeah, when Judge Ito charged the jury on the OJ trial on the Friday, and they were supposed to come back on Monday from the secret location where everybody in the planet knew where it was, and what we did is Danny and I went and we acquired, we had been working 2 weeks before that, we acquired the home names, addresses, and home phone numbers of every single one of the sitting jurors. And we sold it to everybody on the planet for $7,000 per list. And they said, well, I just want 1 or 2 names. Nope, it's an all or nothing deal. You don't get 1 or 2.
Wait, so
it's $7 grand for the whole thing, or you'll be the only person that doesn't know who they are.
But here's the deal that we made. Here's the deal that we made with them. We said, here's what we'll do. We have the list, and we got the list. Here's how we got the list.
Oh, yeah,
We didn't get the list through any computer magic.
No, we got it through touching flesh.
I tried all the computer magic. I read all the jurors' questionnaires, and each one of them put down their occupation and their zip code, and all this. And I went, okay, this guy works for Pepsi. He's a Pepsi truck driver, and he lives here. Let's see what I can. No matter what I did, I could not crack that list through databases. So I had to go back to good old-fashioned thing. The guy that got kicked off, the FedEx juror that got kicked off.
FedEx driver?
I call him up and I go, hi, yeah, my buddy and I just we read about that. We're film producers. We do documentary
Yeah,
films.
we want to
And
talk
he
to you
said,
about that.
we really think you got a raw deal, man. That was really bad how they treated you. You know, we'd like to take your wife and you out to dinner at the House of Blues.
Yeah, we were members of the foundation room, you know, at the top of the House of Blues, the private club up there. So we had the guy meet us there, right?
So we
bring him up there, and I get this guy slackoed, man. I
We
mean,
got
I
so
poured
much
booze
alcohol
down here,
in
and he
him.
is pre-embalmed if he dies. I'm telling you right now, he was slack.
So
Yeah, man, I
and
love
then-
you guys, man. Yeah.
And then when he was really drunk, we said, so, you know, what's that guy's name?
Oh man, I got that right here in my wallet, man. He pulls out. He had all the names and addresses. We say that for a minute in the bathroom. Copy everything down right here.
We got one guy drunk, and we got all the
Got
names.
it all.
What we did is
We made
ran
$35,000 in 1 weekend selling that list.
we made a profile
In cash.
on every one of those guys, so we had them. But we said, okay, we did inject a little bit of ethics into him.
Whatever.
And
I gave him hot top shelf booze.
you know,
That was the other.
in that the people that we sold the
cheap swill for
list
him.
to, the people that we sold the list to, we told them, we want cash in advance, and we will not give you the list
Until
Until the verdict's
the
in.
jury's released.
We said, we have the list, you can't see it until the jury is
Well,
released.
we want the money up front because the second it happens, we're going to email it
And
to
they-
you. You're going to have it instantaneously. We're sitting in front of the TV. When the jury is dismissed, you have it. If we
That's
don't
right.
have the money on deposit, guess what? You're going to be the only
And
one
that's
in town who
exactly the
don't
way
have
we
it.
did it. We did not transmit that list
Yep.
to them until the jury was in. And they go, well, you think they're going to deliver a verdict today? I said, well, I'm going to tell you what. We have the hotel under surveillance,
Isn't it great?
and they came out today with their luggage already packed.
Yeah, the first day of deliberation, they all came out with their luggage in hand, all packed. You think they knew they were going home?
Jeez.
Did you sell it to the LA Times?
Huh?
No.
But yeah, we give it to Sean Huber.
You know what? We got all the separate sources where we got a total of 30. Were all owned by Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah. All of them.
Did you see his jacket, by the way?
Yeah, the Fox News one?
The O'Reilly
O'Reilly
factor?
factor.
They were all Rupert Murdoch pays. these
He's
guys.
entirely too liberal for me. I can
He
tell
has
you right
he
now.
has no problem coughing up money to get a story. When we worked for Fox Undercover and we needed equipment. how
When you
much-
want to
what
see
do you
somebody
need- what
that
do
can
you
drink,
need
man,
now?
that guy can drink.
Oh yeah.
So
Jesus.
who doesn't, I mean, I'm just thinking from the ethics perspective, who has worked with you and does this stuff all the time, and who doesn't, in terms of maybe major newspapers that we know? Or,
Let me tell you something. Every one of them, you're talking about anywhere from 60 Minutes to Dateline to all the
All of the news
Network
shows,
news.
all of the tabloids.
let's talk newspapers.
New York Post, for one.
Okay.
He's not considering that as a legitimate paper, but the Post.
It's on paper.
Just saying.
I love this term,
Will the big
legitimate
papers work
paper.
with you guys?
It's a toilet paper
Pardon?
with
Will
text
the big
on it. This
papers
is
work with you
legitimate
guys?
Oh yeah,
paper.
Will
absolutely.
they pay you for information?
They pay us.
They pay us
for
our
services.
fee for investigative
For our
services.
services.
I'm just saying big paper.
Yeah, they'll pay
Yes.
for our services.
They're not
We need-
paying for the information, they're paying for the labor and the search. Whether
You
we
know,
produce
things
the
that we do.
information or not, we get
I
our
just know
money.
we do it faster than other people.
And you work with reporters for those news organizations that their news organizations don't necessarily know.
I don't know if they know.
Reporter.
I assume they do
Well,
because
Well, I'm assuming
The
they
check
do
comes from
we
the
get,
institution,
we
so
get
I
the
assume
checks
they do know.
from the news agency. We get the checks.
You take credit?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we'll take PayPal over the internet.
I will tell you that for years when I first started doing this, one of my biggest clients, which no longer I don't work for American media anymore, which is National Enquirer, Star, Globe. I don't do stuff for them because I made a major mistake. They had me on staff, and I made the stupid mistake of teaching somebody else how to do what I did.
Once again, Fred was right.
And they now they don't use me because they got some guy whoever I taught
When I told him, why are you doing that?
on staff. Yeah. Well, in any event, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Do you guys do more work for
I need an internship.
you guys do more
That'd
work
be
for
the
press
best
than you do for
internship.
cops?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, now more for the media.
When did that change?
Well, what happened was in
I read that.
the
Or
in-
were you mostly working for the? You started working out for
We
the
were
mob,
working for
then
the-
it went to the
we
cops,
were
and the
working
mob
for the-
together, and then
yeah, we were working for them.
After the Gambino thing, our cover was blown. We were useless because I testified at 27 grand juries. All right? So they pretty much knew who I was, and this is why we went on 60 Minutes, because it's easy to kill some schmuck nobody ever heard of. When you've been all over television and a meteor falls out of space and hits you, the mob did it. So that's why we went. That was the motivation for going on 60 Minutes when Lowell got a hold of us. Well, he
Lowell
actually
did
got a hold
that
of
piece
us.
on 60
Huh?
Minutes. It was like a 20-minute commercial for our services.
Yeah.
And after that happened, the very first phone call we got was from Rupert Murdoch. And he said, you know, you guys look like you're pretty good at infiltrating things, finding out. Would you like?
himself caught you?
Yeah. And
We've been out drinking
and
with
at
Rupert
that-
about 2 dozen times. That's how I know how
and,
much
and
this guy can drink.
his best friend from Australia was Peter Brennan. And Peter was starting to do this new show called The Current Affair. And he asked us to come to work as the in-house investigators for Current Affair. Current Affair was on the air for about 1.5 years. And here was the creator of the show who was doing so well that the competition said if we can't beat him, let's buy him. So they hired the creator of Current Affair away to be the executive producer of Hard Copy. Took his whole crew with him.
Paramount just
So
went
he
and
was
hired
still
him.
getting paid creator money for Current Affair while he was executive producer of Hard Copy. And if you want to read a good book about that whole thing of tabloid journalism and how it got developed, and what is it, a book called Tabloid Baby, you can get it on the internet.
You get it in Borders.
Tabloid Baby generally talks about how that whole thing got started with tabloid journalism, which everybody thought was, you know,
Yeah, the new British invasion.
It was trash, and now, you know, those shows are the ones, and those magazines are the ones that are
British
breaking
Northerners.
stories. Anyway, what I was going to get back to, when I was doing work for the National Enquirer, I would send them a bill, but I wouldn't get a check from the National Enquirer. I got a check every time. I got stacks of check stubs from Sophie Weglinski in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Who this person is,
I have no idea who Sophie Weglinski is, but
Who cares?
there's no such thing as social. So they had opened up a name in the name of this woman in a bank account, strictly for paying sources, so that when they got an envelope in the mail, it didn't come from the National Enquirer. It came because maybe you're the maid for Elizabeth Taylor and you're ratting her out, and all she needs to see is an envelope come from the National Enquirer, you know. So yeah, to this day, they still pay people under the name Sophie Weglinski. So
Do you guys read the paper?
the Enquirer.
Do you read newspapers?
Do I read newspapers?
Not me.
I don't have time to read the newspapers because I'm reading online news all the time. I've seen it as it breaks. There's a line in broadcast news where the character says, I say it here, it comes out there. You know, where he's talking about how he's, you know, doing the research and feeding it to the talking head. And that's the way I feel when I'm sitting there and I'm running stuff and I come across the smoking gun in a story. I get on the horn to some, and I see it.
And you basically tell them, okay, we got it, this is what it is, and you've got the TV on over there, and before you even hang up, you see breaking news, here it comes. I mean, why are you on the phone? It's coming out on the TV.
There's a rush about doing that.
Because they want it, they're so afraid somebody's going to beat them by 5 seconds.
About 4 or 5 years ago, there was a guy that was a wacko white supremacist guy who broke into a synagogue school in Van Nuys and shot up the place, the Jewish Community Center. When that happened, not all my searches are for the media. I also maintain searches for the fugitive squad of the FBI. The fugitive squad of the FBI. They have me do it because their guys don't know how to really manipulate the data.
So the Patriot Act, they shouldn't use this.
Well, let's say the FBI wants, they have a phone number and they want to crack it. They know that a fugitive is at this phone number, they want to crack it. If they want to crack it, they have to go and do an affidavit for search, go down, get a judge to sign it. Then they have to take it over to the phone company, serve it on the phone company, and then they get the information. They can call us and they can get it in 5 minutes.
Or they can call me and pay me as a source.
Yeah, and they pay us still out of the CI fund.
You know, but what happened was when that happened.
For what again? What are they getting for this?
Tracing a phone number.
Or an address. We follow the guy to an address who lives here.
You know, that thing happened. That guy was driving a van with Washington license plates, Washington State license plates. At that particular moment, the Washington, California FBI link for DMV records was down. But AutoTrack's archived database still had those records. Or at least, you know, not live, but, you know, reasonably recent records. So they called me and they said, can you run a plate for us? A Washington plate. I run the plate and it comes back to some Oriental guy. Well, I knew that the guy that broke into the community center was a white guy. And I said, no, this isn't right. So I figured it's relatively safe for me to call the guy that this vehicle comes back registered to. So I call him up and I say, do you own this Dodge van? He says, I traded that in a month ago when I bought a new car at this dealership. I call up the dealership. And I say to the dealership, I say, I don't know whether you're watching the news, but this is, I tell them the story. I said, but this van comes back as having been sold to you. He goes, oh, wow, let me look at my records. Sometimes if you're just upfront with somebody and you tell them what you're doing, they'll be more than helpful because they want to be part of the story.
That's right. Not only that, but you have to empower them. You have to tell them, you know, this is breaking.
You're the only one that can help us.
You are the only one in the entire planet that can help me. You're the only one.
Goes and pulls up his records.
If you empower them, they'll step up.
And he goes and he says, you know, that came in as a vehicle and we sold it on our used car lot 4 days ago. I said, to who? He said, we sold it to a guy named Buford Furrow. So now, before I ever did the AutoTrack search, I just punched in Buford Furrow into Google search and hit so many white supremacist sites in Google. I went, oh yeah, this is your guy. So I called the FBI up and I said, your guy, the guy you're looking for is a guy named Buford Furrow. And I tell him the whole thing and I give him his social and all the other stuff. And within a few minutes, now they're running his name through NCIC. And
what's NCIC?
And National Crime Information Center, whatever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm talking to Fox News because they're trying to get the same kind of information. And I say, the guy that did this, his name is Buford Furrow. The FBI is going to probably announce it in about 20 minutes. I said, he has a sister who lives. Who lives.
So you can get to her before they announce it.
You can get to his sister's house. you know, I mean, I was helping the FBI out, but at the same time, I got these clients, you know.
How
So-
does that work with the FBI? Like, is the FBI
They
when
can
they
care
hire,
less,
they
as
don't?
long as
What
they
do you
get their
do with
guy.
the information is?
I give them what they, yeah.
And if
We
they
have-
do have a problem, if they say, well, we want to know this, but don't sell, we'll let you know when.
I've had
And they know we'll do
times-
that.
Because they know you.
They know we'll do that, yeah.
Let me tell you something. The FBI is quite, all Justice Department people are quite willing, if you develop a really good relationship with them, to trade favors back and forth. There's been times where I couldn't crack a driving record. See, because here's the way driving records work. Some states will give you the full driving record. Other states will only give you truncated. California only gives you the name. They do not give you home addresses.
From a license?
From a license. From a license plate, they don't give it. So what I do is I usually develop the name, then I punch the name into credit header databases like AutoTrack and find out where the home address is. So it's a two-step process. Well, I've had one of the toughest ones I ever had was there was this woman who was a Playboy playmate back in the 50s, the one that looks very gothic, dark hair. One, you know, I mean,
Yeah, they'll remember
but she was,
They'll know it right off the bat.
she was like, you know, she became like this.
Elvira?
Yeah, but she was like Elvira. She looked like Elvira. But anyway, Betty Page. Betty Page. Remember Betty Page? So they wanted to find out, the tabloids wanted to find out whatever happened to Betty Page. Well, actually, what happened to Betty Page is Betty Page was nuts. And she had shot and killed her landlord about 30 years ago, and got found not guilty by reason of insanity and got put in an insane asylum. Did 20 years and got out because they figured she was all better now, and stabbed her next landlord. And now finally she was maybe all better, but she's like 70 years old. But they wanted to track her down, and she had been. Not so much because she had decided to go undercover. She had been living without any credit files for so long, kind of like the Unabomber, why he was so hard to track down. He didn't have any credit files. That trying to get a real address was very hard. And so I called up my FBI source and I said, can you know, here's the license number and here's the name. Can you give me the home address? They had no problem giving it to me. You know, they knew it was for a story. You know, tell her how you got it. But I got it, and I went out there, and it was another halfway house for wackos. You know, but we were able to put it under surveillance and get pictures of her. She's now in her close to 80 years old.
And with the Unabomber,
What's the best online database for tracking credit records?
DBT.
Database technologies. Because database technologies. Here, let me tell you the story.
No, hold on. I want to go to the Unabomber
Okay,
for a
go
minute.
Wait, hang on a second, because it's 12:30, so anyone who
Yeah.
has to go, and whoever wants to stay, you guys are cool with continuing on?
Yeah, we can say those.
It's not like I have life.
We've been working on the Unabomber, and when they captured him, he was on our short list of 11 people. We wanted $1 million. We don't care if he blew up Berkeley.
We were so
wanted
bummed.
$1 million. Right?
We were pissed that his brother turned
What
him
we
in.
did is rather than looking for somebody who is there, we all knew where he came from. They all knew he came out of here. So what we did is we ran Berkeley, and we started running Berkeley students and professors, not to see who is there. We were running to see who is no longer in the databases and not dead. And out of the whole gambit of years that we did, and we were doing a spare time, we're not doing anything today, let's look for the Unabomber, We had a short list of 11 people who had dropped off the face of the planet. They no longer showed in the databases, but they were not dead. And he was one of them. And that next day, man, they got the son of a bitch. I wanted to go strangle his brother, man. He didn't even take the reward.
How
What a
do you,
schmuck.
if you're talking with people that you don't want somebody else to know that you've talked to, which is, it's just not an inconceivable thing that investigative journalists are doing. How would you try and make sure that if you have a source that you do not want somebody You do not want anybody, whether they're you guys, they could hire you guys, and they say, I want to find out whether or not anybody who works for my company has talked to this.
First of all, don't talk to them on the phone.
Always in person.
Any phone.
Any phone.
What about those?
You can get those prepaid card phones. Yeah,
cards.
those are good.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about don't talk to them on any registered telephone.
So if you use those prepaid cards from your home phone, would that still work?
No. Prepaid cards using the
You
cell
give them
phones
the-
that you buy in 7-Eleven or something like, the prepaid cell
And use it
phones.
from some
But they
phone
track
that does
down
not
that
come
guy
back to you.
from.
Because even though it's not
They
going to
track
show
down
in your
that
phone
Al-Qaeda
bill, the
guy
people who
through one
issue
of
the
those
card
phones.
will know what he's
but
paying because they have
knew,
the
but they
credit
knew where he
against the
bought the
card.
phone, and they knew, It's
Yeah.
still even that if you've got you under surveillance and
I
you
love
did,
that.
they tracked down the big drug lord down in South America.
One of the
that was killed through a
one of
cell
the
phone.
reporters in here said that what she would do is whenever she spoke with a source on the telephone, she would then call all 35. She would call 35 other people, and so it was basically.
Well, that will do it too.
It was
do it.
every time you would talk, you would.
I'm
like
going to
an awful lot of work,
tell you
but
a
that would
couple
certainly do
of phone trick stories that we. One of the tricks that's used by private investigators for skip tracing is also used by federal law enforcement. There's a company out of Colorado that is a small telephone company. It's got 500 subscribers. Any phone company, no matter how big or large, can buy blocks of time from major carriers, whether it's AT&T or Sprint or MCI. They can buy blocks of time, and they can issue phone cards. Any of the companies that issue phone cards get to see the records associated with those phone cards usage. They don't tell you that when they're selling you a phone card in 7-Eleven, that they can see the records.
Because if they're going to credit the number against your card, they have to see where it went. They have to see what
Was
the
the
number is.
one person that everybody stays in touch with all their life? Their
Right.
mom. Now, what happens is the FBI has, and private investigators as well, get custom phone cards printed up for them, 50, 60-minute phone cards that come in a real slick package that looks like it's a marketing promotional thing, saying you've been selected at random to receive 60 free minutes. Because they know that mom's been told, don't call me from the house. They got the phone tapped.
Yeah.
Use a payphone.
And half of them are mailing mom
And
phone
mom
cards.
has been racking up a huge bill in phone calls from the payphone, and she's just delighted to get 60 free minutes. She doesn't know that the minute she uses that card, the very first activation
In live time, you're going to see it come up.
alerts that this call has been made, and that's what they do. They mail cards to mom. So mom should know not to call if she gets a free card.
Wow.
And when Marlon Brando's kid was up for the murder, that was back before the phones were as good as they are now. It never ceases to amaze me, no matter how rich a person is, they love free stuff. So what we did with Marlon Brando is we went down to Fry's or whatever, and we bought a cordless phone. But it wasn't, a 900 megahertz. It was the old ones. And we just bought it and mailed it to Marlon. No package, no nothing. Just put it in the package and mailed it to Marlon. Marlon opened that goddamn thing. First thing he did is plug it in and call everybody, tell him he got a free phone.
Jesus.
And now he's calling his attorney and he's calling everybody else. And he's talking on a phone that we're listening to.
And that's not illegal.
It's not illegal. It's broadcasting in the clear. At that time, it is now.
It's illegal now.
At that
It used to
time, it
be
wasn't.
that there was no law against, if it was open, clear communication.
Yeah,
and
we
you
bought the
could
You
phone,
have
listen
we
to
no
bought the
it,
expectation of privacy.
But now they passed a specific law saying that you cannot
Cordless
listen
phones.
to cordless phones.
Amazing.
What about cell phones?
Same thing, there's a special law for cell phones. But there wasn't
Lowell
before.
happened to mention that you guys can call cell phones and turn them on.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
You can
How
charge
is
it on
this not illegal?
Yeah.
What?
We do it all the
How
time
is
in
that
business
not
meetings.
illegal? If you turn on-
That is illegal, but because you're listening over a cell phone. All cell phones have a chip in them called auto answer, silent auto answer. So what you do is you got your cell phone, and you're in a conversation with somebody. You got two sources that you're trying to get information on, and while you're there, you'll leave your cell phone on silent.
I gotta go to
That's
John.
I gotta go to the head. I'll be back in a minute. It's just like the car
You take your
salesman
other
who's
cell
trying
phone
to
up,
sell
you
you
open
a
up the mic
car.
and you can hear what they're saying.
When he leaves the booth, he listens in on what you're talking about, so he knows how to close the deal when you come back. You know how to close the deal when you come back too, because you've just listened to what they're talking about while you're in
So
the
okay,
can.
I was under the impression that you could go and you would be in your car and you could turn somebody else.
No,
Well, I
we're
can
talking
do
about
that.
our own
I can do
phone.
that, but that's a different story.
Yeah. That's a whole different ballgame.
That is done by using a chip. There's a chip that will take the phone off hook. That's a home phone, a cell phone, or whatever. You can call the number; it'll never ring,
You
but
put a
it'll come
tone
off.
in, it opens up the microphone of every phone in the whole house.
And it'll take off hook.
Very illegal.
How did you make the jump from doing? Again, Lowell was telling us a story about how you were tapping in, like physically, like clipping into these when you were setting up these boiler rooms. You were
Right.
somewhere along the line. I mean, it's a copper cable, and you were attaching something.
That's right,
was
we're making
always-
a wire drop off of a
And now
telephone
it's
pole 2 miles
all
from
it's
here.
all digital. Is it a big difference?
No, not really. It's anytime you're hardwired. Anytime you're hardwired, you can get the signal. In fact, now,
Yeah.
because of the digital age, sometimes it's easier because now you got everybody using cordless digital stuff, and as long as you know how to decode it, you've got a digital decoding chip. You can just listen in. I was talking to them a couple of days ago, mentioning that now that everything is wireless, people who go out and they want to have wireless laptops and systems, I wouldn't use wireless anything. Because all you got to do is stick a LAN card in the side of your laptop, drive down the street, and just start
You'll pick people up.
seeing what
Using the
everybody's
wireless, you're
doing.
getting their keystrokes right on your computer.
You know,
One would think
you're
that would work in
transmitting,
banks
you're
if they go
transmitting what
wireless.
you're doing on your laptop for anybody who's in the neighborhood that wants to pick it up.
We were
And-
driving the other day. Let me just tell you what we did. We're in their car, driving through neighborhoods in LA, and he has this $49
Yeah.
video receiver. He's plugged it into RCA outlets. We're picking up signals from inside people's homes from little wireless video cameras. We're driving through, and all of a sudden static, and then in comes the image from someone's living room. And you drive a little
wireless
further.
spy cam.
They sell them at Home Depot, the little home security thing gives you like a little
Everybody is
receiver and-
watching their wife and
You're
their kids
broadcasting
and
your
their
life to the
nanny
world
and-
when you put those up.
You can see the actual images?
Anybody
yeah.
who drives down the
There's that.
street can look at
Because
what's
they don't
going on
have
in your
firewalls.
house.
No, they don't have digital encryption.
There's only 4 frequencies that they operate on. He has this transceiver. You just push this button. It's like a little piece of plastic. Just 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, it's
Just
4
drove
channels.
through
They
from
only
1,
use
2,
4 channels.
3,
Yes,
4.
it's
1, 2, 3, 4.
So
Just
they're
picking
all
up
4
images from people's wireless video cameras all over the
You know,
place.
what was strange is this whole story that he's doing is about how it's about wiretapping, it's about monitoring electronics and all that. And so we had set up a scene where we shot that. Now we're going to go out in the neighborhood, and we figured, okay, we'll drive around the neighborhood and see.
Till we find one of these cameras.
We
got a
drove
couple
about
hours.
50 feet.
Jeez, not too hard.
We drove around the corner,
You
and
got
we
another
already
one.
got one. In this camera, you can tell from the image that this is obviously not somebody who said, "Oh, I'm going to put in a nanny
No.
cam so I can."
No.
This was a hidden camera you could see because it was poking through the grill of something.
Yeah, it was
Looking
up in
into
an
a
air
room.
conditioning vent or something like that. I think
This
somebody
was a
spying on his
perv
own
cam,
family.
you know.
And wants to see who wifey is
How
doing
do you
today or
hear
something.
How you
Wait, so
picking up
then we're on his wireless laptop, and he punches up. He has the ability to punch up this house. So we find out that the guy owns
He's a
like-
lawyer. He's a lawyer, and he owns a whole shitload of the house. He's like a slumlord or something, you know. Yeah.
101 corporations
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
registered to or something.
Yeah,
And but
Did you call him?
no.
you see what the demonstration was for, though, was not so much to show that people are using these, but to show how the bad guys
Yeah, that's
are using your. You put in security technology. You put in security technology to protect
You've got the
yourself.
baby monitor
What they're
watching
doing
your
is they're
infant.
using
This guy
your
drives by and knows
cameras.
the infant's alone in that room.
They know that you're home alone, or
Or that you're
whatever.
not home.
Yeah,
But
that's-
they can take it one step further. They got wireless internet access. They pull up to your house.
Yeah,
They
it's
go,
a huge store.
oh, she looks
We're
like she's
already
alone in the
producing.
house. What's the address of the house?
Way there.
They run the
Yeah, that's
address.
amazing.
They Google
We
search the
started on it
address.
yesterday when he left.
Now they go onto public databases
so.
like county recorder's office, and they find out who owns the home, how much it's worth. You know, in this particular case, on this particular guy, I ran the county recorder to get the guy's name. Then I ran to get occupants. So I saw that he and his little wife lived there together. They were like 35 years old. But then I Google searched his name and got a hit on the California State Bar website that he was an attorney, which told me where he went to law school, when he graduated, gave me his office phone number so I can call to see if his wife's home alone because he's at the office.
Oh, that's terrible.
You know, the fact is that I know because I was a crook that there are guys out there doing this.
They're doing it right now as we speak, I guarantee you.
You know, you're helping them burglarize your house.
What about
You
like
know, and know what's
those
in
ADT security systems, you know, that people set up with the alarm that sends a signal to the ADT security?
Yeah, you
I saw
know,
a smile
you
on your face.
can.
Oh, I have one.
You
I have
have
mine.
You
Yeah, it's not
can
ADT, but
crack
it's a similar company.
those alarm systems. Any alarm system that's made can be cracked. You can intercept it. You can defeat it. You can.
But alarm systems
Shut
are
it
made
down.
for the schmuck who needs to go buy himself some dope and he's just going to break your window and go in. They're not made for professional criminals. Professional criminals, home alarms work fine because that's what they're made for. When people burglarize houses, they just come up and kick in your back door and come in. I mean, you know, you don't have the saint sneaking around.
Yeah,
You know, right?
Whenever you're
So-
punching a touchstone pad, you're putting out a signal.
Right.
And any guy that's a pro that wants to burglarize your house parks outside with his receiver on. He waits for you to set your alarm code, and he reads what your code is.
Jeez.
You know, I mean, all these things do. They don't provide security. They provide peace of mind for the stupid.
It's basically the same thing they're doing in the Air Force right now.
Press
Peace of
that
mind
button
for the
through the
stupid.
wires.
We did a
You said that on camera the other day.
Oh, piece of, I don't know.
I like that.
Just set it up.
We did a story for Fox Undercover about theft of guys that were had a ring doing bank cards. You know, they were counterfeit cards, and part of it was that people would they go do a bank transaction at the auto teller and they'd throw their receipt away. You know, in the trash.
Or they could scan out of the machine.
Because I
Yeah.
see them.
Yeah, and then the number on it has XXX.
Yeah.
But the whole point is it's a piece of a puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is that when they're sitting there with the receipt or with their receiver on, you're putting in your card, punching in those codes. They got a receiver because once again, every time you're using a touchstone gun, it puts out a pulse.
There's a
And
tone.
they can-
There's an audible tone.
So the ATM, they
No,
can
the
pick up your
ATM
secret
machines go
code?
beep, 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 it's all
Yeah,
the same tone.
It's the same tone, but they're putting out a subaudible tone that's transmitted.
Right.
And the computer can decode
Otherwise,
that.
it would be all
It's-
the
it's
same
called
tone.
a-
Button, though, it's
Yeah, it's called
electronic,
it's
right?
called the DTMF decoder, and it decodes the buttons you've pushed and turns it into numbers that come up on the screen. So they now know who your PIN code is.
And the
And it'll-
DTMF decoder is an actual physical object.
Yeah,
that
it's
it
a
actually
doodad.
translates.
Some of
It just there's frequencies that are coming out.
some of the
Yeah.
less sophisticated ways guys were stealing PIN codes, were you can go to, I don't know, they got Fry's Electronics up here or not. Yeah, they got Fry's. You can buy micro flat chip cameras
Yeah.
that will broadcast on 2.2 gigahertz.
Put
To
it
the
there,
size
put
of
it
a
down,
postage
put it
stamp. You
Oh,
just,
you put
you
'em
just
up there.
take a little chewing gum, stick one up there, and it looks right down onto the pin pad. And you're sitting in your van watching them punching their keystrokes, and you know what their pin is.
Then you keep their card.
Either,
But that's what the receipt-
what the receipts, we match up the receipts with the times and all that. There's ways of getting that data. You just have, you can create your own, you
And
clone
you
a
can
card.
buy the doodad to encode
You can
blank
buy-
cards.
you can
I
buy
had
the
somebody
equipment.
clone one of my
You
credit
can-
cards,
you can
and they
buy
picked them
the
up. He had never used them,
equipment
they
to
picked it up.
encode
He had a
it.
blank card in it with the magnetic strip, and when the cop scanned it, it had my Visa information on it.
Yeah, I look around carefully whenever I go in. If I'm going to use an image, and we took this investigation one step further just to show the stupidity of the American public. As we wanted to see how gullible people were, and we took and bought an old mailbox. Because the post office sells those.
We took a mailbox that we sat in front of a bank. We painted it. Hold on, then. I put on a suit and a tie, right? Little tie, little suit, little name tag, B of A, Stood there. People are coming up to make their bank drops,
After hours, after the bank's closed.
I stood there, and we put a piece of paper over the little bank drop. Stood there. Now the bank knows we're doing this. We know we're doing it. The cops know we're doing it, right? And we're sitting there. Guy would come in from Safeway with his drop, who knows how many thousands and thousands of dollars in cash in it. And he'd walk up and I'd say, "Oh, excuse me, the thing is broken and we've got a problem inside, so here," and I have a clipboard. I give him a little B of A receipt. I say, "Here's your little receipt, thank you, here, we'll take care of that," and I put it in this box. We had like 20 people give us money. There were hundreds of thousands of dollars in this box, and I'm giving them a freaking receipt that I stole out of the B of A.
That's what the human being in a suit with a tie and a clipboard.
It's the uniform.
Then, no.
They expect to see the bank.
We went and took did the same scenario at another bank where we had the same mailbox, and we just hung a sign saying, "Night deposit out of order."
Place money here?
And people put it in
You wouldn't believe it.
People will do
without anybody there and give them a receipt, they dump the cash in the box.
Well, hey, last night in Oakland, the post office had people standing out on the street as cars were driving by to drop off their tax returns.
Yeah.
And people were standing out on the street taking people's
And
tax
putting them in
returns
the
out of
mailbox.
the car. No, they weren't even doing that.
Yeah.
They were just like, people were driving by and going, "Here's my tax return," and driving away.
Yeah, right. You don't know who that idiot is.
I should have got the receipt, certificate of
Hey, you
mailing.
got their tag, you got everything.
Well,
Do that.
I lived my whole life by the premise of if God didn't want him sheared, he wouldn't have made him sheep.
And they showed that on the nightly news.
Wow.
So where'd you learn your skills? Because from what I understand, in terms of your skill sets, you have much more technical skill set.
Well,
right?
Yeah.
first of all, I didn't learn anything by going to school for a
Right.
thing.
Do you subscribe to 2600?
Except for your times in prison. That's
When I
It's the current California
right.
postgraduate
Yeah,
education.
the prison is very educated.
Is that what you learned?
When I was growing up, I was just one of those guys that was like always interested in everything. Spent a lot of time in the library. I'd read about everything. So yeah, I acquired a really good skill when I was like 5. It was called reading. I learned how to read, and so if I didn't know about something, I went to the library, and how I became a crook, I don't know. It was just because I grew up in a crooked neighborhood, and I used my skills to the wrong thing. But I wouldn't. I grew up in the Bay Area, but I lived in Richmond, and I was a rarity. I was one of the only white kids living in Richmond. Richmond, in fact, today I think is still fairly black. But I grew up in a place called Triangle Court, which was government housing in Richmond. My father committed suicide when I was 10 months old. He had come back from the war, shot up, and was suffering from depression and committed suicide. My mother had 10 kids to take care of. I was the youngest of 10 kids. So we were always like out fending, just like the story about I was born in a duck blind. Well, that's true. My mom used to go to the Richmond Rod and Gun Club and hunt ducks so that she'd have enough food to feed us. We were like poor white trash. But growing up, I always absorbed myself in books and read about things. And the internet and electronics was no different. If they printed how to do it in a book, I can figure out how to do it.
Not only that, but you got to remember that our first computers were way back like 80, 88, so we've been with this technology ever since it was invented. I mean, we got on it very quickly. We were doing web pages in HTML before there were HTML editors when you had to do it with the code. So we've come right along as the technology came along. We didn't become roadkill on the side of the
As far as
information
telephone
highway.
systems was concerned,
Yeah, that's a good point.
when
But it was just a matter of staying
wanted
right on
to
top of the
learn
curve.
about, because everything is always based on somebody asked me, hey, can you do this? Like, you know, when I was a kid doing burglaries, I was involved with other kids. And when I realized, you know, alarm systems, so I would go and learn how to do alarm systems. Well, the same thing is I had people start approaching me and saying, where I realized it was a buck in tapping phones, but I didn't know shit about phones. I was living in Florida at the time. I went to work as a telephone lineman, where they were training a telephone lineman trainee at United Telephone of Florida. I only went there, I could care less about picking up a paycheck. I went there because I wanted to get a job where I would have access to phone company equipment and learn how it works. And again, I used my skills there. I was working for the DEA, and at the time I was thinking to myself, well, hold on a minute. The DEA is paying me to go out and make a buy of a couple of kilos, and then when I make that buy, they're going to pay me, $4,000, $5,000. They're going to arrest this guy. They're going to seize the drugs, and they're going to put him away. You know, how about if I eliminate the middleman? You know, the DEA, and just put the guy out of business myself. My feeling was that I was serving my community, making money.
Your feeling was you were stealing the fucking
So what
money.
I would do is I would read in Florida, and all these little towns, across the country. You get these newspapers that do the crime beat column. Who got arrested?
Police blotter, yeah.
The police blotter. So I'd look to find out who got arrested on Friday. I'd read the Saturday paper, because if people got arrested on Friday, you ain't getting out of jail till Monday. So I get the names of guys that got picked up for, he got popped for selling an 8-ball of coke at such and such a bar. So I go back over to the phone company. I go into the terminal, because they had the computer there, and I was working for the phone company. I'd punch up and I'd get the guy's home address and everything. I'd go driving out to his house in a phone company truck with a tool belt on. I'd knock on the front door. If nobody answered, I'd go around to the back sliding door, chimney the lock, slide it open. I'd search the house, and I'd find his cash and drug stash. I was doing both the government and him a favor, because I knew they would have a warrant on Monday to search his house. Well, he was getting less time because there wouldn't be 2 kilos there. I'd have him, and I had his cash too. And he would always be convinced, the guy who would always be convinced that the cops stole his drugs and his money.
So what'd you do with the drugs?
The drugs I sometimes use as bait for other things, but by this time, by the way, before I went to work for the DEA, I had never used a drug in my life. By the time I was down in Florida, I was a full-blown crackhead. Because I had this, how bad can this shit be? And I got strung out on crack for many, many years. When I quit. There was no AA involved or CA or anything. It was just one day I went, I'm done. And
It
I
wasn't
quit.
one day, it was a couple of weeks, because for about 3 weeks, we'd be driving over to one of the
Oh yeah,
joints here in
but I
Berkeley.
just decided.
one
to quit.
day.
We were coming from Marin, and every time we'd come over, he'd take his torches, pipes, and he'd throw them off the goddamn Richmond Bridge, and then he'd say, stop over here and telegraph. And he'd buy new ones. This went on for like 2 weeks. Every day he'd throw it out
It
the
wasn't
window,
a
and
one-day
he'd buy new
process,
ones.
but it was within about 3 weeks. I just decided to quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was done. I just figured that it wasn't for me anymore. I was just seeing my life go down the shitter, and I always felt I could have more fun with that kind of money going to Disneyland than I could, spending it on crack every day. I was making a fortune, and for most people, one of the factors that keeps them from doing illegal drugs is the fact that they might get caught and go to jail for it. I was a guy who had bags of cocaine in the trunk of my car with
Couldn't go to
DEA
jail.
evidence tags on them, and I couldn't get arrested for it because I worked for the DEA. And they knew I was strung out on cocaine. They didn't care. I was one of their best sources of information.
How did you keep from getting this razor blade that you were talking about? I mean, after you send a couple, it seems to me like the reason why the DEA hires you is so because you're dropping a dime on somebody, and the person that they're going to be pissed at is you,
Right.
and
But
not.
it doesn't work that way. What happens is that, let's say you're selling the drugs and I'm buying the drugs, okay? Well, you're the target. What happens is it's not you walk in, meet the guy the first time, he's going to sell you $500,000 in drugs. It's not going to work that way. There's a whole bunch of meeting, confidence stuff and that sort of thing that goes on. But eventually, what is going to happen 2 or 3 meetings down the road is I'm going to introduce an actual DEA agent to you as the money guy. He's the guy with the money. And you being the greedy son of a bitch that you are, you're going to try and cut me out of the deal. And you're going to go around behind my back and you're going to deal directly with that guy.
People do that.
They do it all the time. Every single drug deal I've ever done, they've done it. Every
In
single
regular
one.
life, people do that in many ways.
Every
One of
single
our,
one.
our favorite ones.
And then when the guy gets popped, he's like, he calls you up, you motherfucker, man, that guy was a cop. I said, yeah, ain't I glad you cut me out of the deal, asshole?
We had a guy in Baltimore,
You
Maryland,
can apply that to story.
that we went and we did that same setup, because we know it's going to get to the thing. And the DEA agent that we introduced, they said, so what does he do? He says, oh, he runs a company called B&A Import and Export. B&A was a company that the DEA actually set up. Stood for Buy and Arrest. Buy and Arrest, Import and Export. And we had come up with this really bullshit story. As a result of this incident, we started making up this game called Really. And the game of Really is paid by, let's see what incredible bullshit story we can tell somebody, and if he says, really, then you got a point. But anyway,
Hold on. You really got invented. You all know the pass out here going out to the San Joaquin with all the windmills up there?
Yeah.
We're in a gas station, and there's these 2 people from Pidong, Iowa or someplace, and they're like, wow, looking at the windmills. And one guy goes to the girl, well, I wonder what that is. And I go, oh, you haven't heard about the global warming thing? And she goes, no. I said, well, the reason it's global warming is because, oh no, the fans aren't cooling it down. The reason that it's happening is because the Earth is slightly tilting on its axis, and they're building these all over to tilt it back. And she went, really? And then he looked at me and went, that was good.
Anyway, this guy who's a drug dealer says, so
that's how
what is
ridiculous
B&A Import and Export? What does this guy do? And the guy says, because it was just B&A, the B&A company. He says, so he said, I don't know how this came out. I said, well, you know those old railroad cars that are no longer usable, the box cars? I said,
the Sealand containers, the ones they take off the truck and put on the train.
He buys these old Sealand containers and he makes them into portable hunting cabins and airlifts them into the thing.
There's a company that actually does that for real now.
But I know they do it for real,
it.
but at that time they didn't do it. And it was a bullshit story. So, so the guy says, wow, that'd be cool. I'd like to get one of those. You know. He ends up, he wonders, you know, if we can, you know, we want to do this deal with him. We know he's a dealer. Well, he met us backstage at a rock concert in Baltimore. We were at Bob Seger concert. And he says to us, so what do you do? Off the top of our heads, we go, oh, we're the road managers for the Moody Blues.
Because we figured nobody heard of the Moody Blues in 100 years, you know? You know, we're old enough, you know. We don't even know the Moody Blues are playing in Washington, D.C. right now.
Bible concert that week in Washington, D.C. So the guy goes, without saying anything, he says, oh, this is the one that you won't have any problem getting me backstage with the Moody Blues.
To tomorrow night's concert at the Cat Center.
So we go, yeah, we can get you back there. And we're thinking,
oh, you
yeah, no problem.
But what we do is we say, okay, if we really wanted to pull this off, how would we do it? So we call up the Capitol Center and we tell them with the DEA. Turns out that the manager of the Capitol Center is a retired NSA agent. He goes, come on down. He takes us and he introduces to all the members of the Moody Blues. He gives us backstage passes and laminates and everything. And he basically tells them, look, we know you're all heroin addicts. You want to be able to come into the country for the next concert?
Yeah.
You'll play along with this.
That's the deal. That's what we tell them. You know?
So,
you don't want us to start going through your luggage.
So now they've only met us like a couple hours earlier.
Yeah.
The Moody Blues has only met us, and they told them we're undercover agents of the DEA. We go pick up the bad guy. We got a limo, we drive back. Everybody's acting like they've known this forever.
Oh yeah, the guards are waving at us. They take the limo and they open the gates. We drive it down underneath the Capitol Center to these private elevators. They give us this booth about this size up there, you know, because they got the basketball booths up there. You know, we catered food and everything. They give us this booth, and we're up there. The guys go, "Whoa, you guys are something else." And we break out an 8-ball cocaine, and we're all doing lines, and we're having a good old time. And next thing you know, the guy sells us the 2 kilos, and bam, he's popping.
No, what happens is he goes and approaches the other guy. He approaches
that's when he goes
the
behind
DEA
us.
guy and sells the kilos to him.
Yeah.
Now he gets busted. He calls us from jail. He says, "Man, that guy was a narc." And we go, "Yeah, we just found out. He almost lost."
Man, good thing you put us out of the
Fred
deal,
goes to him. Fred goes.
I go, well,
Can we
listen,
we can bail you out?
No, I go, well, listen, you know,
you're gonna
need attorneys, right? So you know, how's your money situation? He goes, man, I'm broke. I said, you got any more drugs? I said, because I can move them for you. He said, yeah, I got 1 kilo stairs somewhere else. We pop them again 2 days later. How stupid!
Now
is
you
that?
want to really go to how stupid the guy really is. Now he's being interviewed by the DEA agent who arrested him, who posed as this.
Who was in the Capitol Center.
Right.
Yeah. But he's the one who posed as being this guy that ran this company that did these cabins. And in the middle of the interview, he says to him, "By the way, when I get out of here, can I still get one of those cabins?" From you. Don't you understand?
Hello?
Under arrest.
Anybody home in here?
It was a lie. It was a bullshit. We don't do that. But the guy was still asking about the cabins.
Is there anywhere where, I got 2 questions really. Is
Yeah.
there anywhere where you draw the line, things that you absolutely positively will not do?
Absolutely. I have an entire set of rules that I will not break under any circumstances. Number 1, nobody can hurt a woman or a kid in front of me. I've never hit a woman in my life, and I'm married 35 years since I was 19. If I haven't hit one by now, I'm never gonna. Because Lord knows I've wanted to. Oh, yes, indeed. But I don't allow people to mistreat women or children in front of me. And number 2 is I never break my word. Never. Under any circumstances do I break my word.
Of all the work
When
that
are
I've
you
done as a-
giving your word and when are you not?
I only give my word when I'm going to keep it.
Like, what do you mean by that? Because if you're undercover,
I don't give them my word.
What's the?
All right,
You're
How do I know? If I'm
Yes.
talking with you, how do I know you've given me your word?
Because I say you've got my word that I won't do that.
Okay.
That's how.
So that's
The-
You can put it in the bank. I swear on the life of my children, it's not going to happen.
The other thing is
right?
I've never rolled over on anybody. I have
I don't break it
never
ever.
been an informant for the police to get out of a crime that I committed myself. I've never become a snitch. Everything that I've done undercover, I did where the guy started out as my target, and I went out after him. You know, that was my job. I was doing what I did. I didn't start out as his friend and crime partner and then get caught
And then get caught and say, "Oh, I
sell
can
him
get out
out
of
to
this."
keep from going to prison myself. And those times that I did go to prison, I could have gotten out of it by writing somebody up. I just didn't do it.
What's your other question?
My second question was, now you have some criminal history, but you don't.
No.
So, weapons carry. Do you carry?
Well, I
And would you
no
use them?
longer do,
Yes.
but I did carry weapons at one time. A recent incident has made me rethink that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, you already went through that, but
No, I didn't
I'm
go
going to
through it.
field this here. I carried a weapon in the state for 30 years. I can still carry a weapon if I want to. I don't carry one right now because I don't really have a need to, and besides that, this is a place where it's 100 degrees. The permit is to carry it concealed. Do you think I want to be walking around with a jacket on? I do not. I'd rather be shot. Right? And yes, I carried a weapon here for many, many years, and I have had to use the weapon.
So you have
in-
no fear of retaliation.
I have no
from
fear of, I have no fear
drug
of death.
dealers or the.
I have absolutely no fear of death. Do I have fear of being maimed or dismembered or cooked or something else? Yes, but I am not afraid of death.
But I
Death
mean,
and I are old friends.
So that's part of your work.
It is
ethics
very hard to
really.
kill somebody who's not afraid, I gotta tell you. I've had guns pointed at me, just like this. It'll downright rattle you when you point a gun at somebody and they're not afraid, because I've had it happen to me.
With drug dealers or?
Anybody. You
You
point a
ever-
gun at somebody and
you ever
they're
hear a
flat
poem?
out not afraid, it'll downright rattle you. It ain't all that easy to shoot them either. I've been shot at 4 times as close as he is and they haven't hit me.
You ever hear a poem that goes, the coward dies 1,000 deaths, the valiant only dies once.
Yeah.
Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
But I was in I'm not gonna say which bar it was, but it's a chain, you would all know what it
if you
is.
walk through, Joe Davidson, the FBI agent that was our camber, he
He's in San
said,
Francisco, isn't he?
out of
came
San
to class.
Francisco. He did,
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had
Joe was our hammer. Joe once said about us, most people walk through life carefully, tip through the life very carefully, so that they might arrive at death safely. We do not.
No, you just run through the minefield and take your chances. I was at, to answer your question with the gun, there's a chain of restaurants in here, and they're all over the country, but I was in one in a town that I've been in once or twice in my life, a major city, but I was standing at a table talking to some babe at the bar, just having a good old time, having a cocktail. I had my 357 on here because I was working. And in the middle of the bar noise, there's like 100 people in there. It's, you know, a big chain like the Outback. It's not the Outback, but it's that kind of a place, a steak kind of place. And I hear this curse, and I swear, you motherfucker, and you did it. And I turn around, and there is a guy just as close as I am to you right here with a gun pointed at me, telling me his life story about you did this to my sister or some crap. I don't know, because I'm going, this is fairly interesting, you know. And I'm sitting sideways to him. I'm actually sitting at the bar sideways, and my gun is over there, and he's by you. And the girl is here, and she's freaking out, you know. And I'm going, yeah. Me? I mean, is that who you're talking to me? I don't even know your sister, man. I've never even been in this town before. And he said, you know, I'm gonna blow your brains out.
It was a mistaken identity.
He mistook me for somebody else. Out of the 150 million people who don't have guns, he picks on the one that does. How bad is this guy's luck? So he's standing there, and there was a guy standing next to him at one of these oval stand-up tables. And he shoved the guy, and when he shoved him, his gun came off me, and I just went, I shot him twice, once in the heart, once in the lung, picked him right up, threw him right over the table, and all I remember about it, most, because it all went, from the minute the guy shoved him, it's all very, very clear to me. I have absolute perfect memory of it, because I remember the gun firing twice, and I remember this guy being physically picked up off the floor, but what I remember most is the really surprised look on his face, man, as he went back, because he just couldn't believe that it happened so fast. And I killed him dead. He was dead before he hit the floor. And there's like 100 people in there, and they're all starting. I said, nobody move, everybody sit down. And they said, what? I said, we didn't see nothing. I said, you stay here and tell the cops you didn't say nothing. You call the cops. You know, when the cops came in, I had my gun sitting on the bar, and I'm standing like, if I got a dead body on the floor, I'm not going to be standing there.
Now, I
with
got a
gun.
question. When
So-
Joe Davidson came here, what did he talk about?
So when I go back over, they take me to the chicken wire room, and they sit me in there for a while, and they take interviews, and they came back about 3 hours later, and they handed me my gun and my bullets and said, you're free to go, it's a good shoot. The guy said he was going to kill you. What are you supposed to do, wait for him to shoot you? I always believed that it would bother me to kill somebody. Ever since I was little, even through the military, I always believed, I truly believed that it would really bother me. And I can tell you, looking back at it, it never bothered me one iota. I could have ate a chili dog while I was doing it. Because I was absolutely convinced this man was going to kill me when he was done telling me his story. So the moral of the story is, if you're going to shoot, shoot, don't talk. You know? But I always believed it would bother me.
Now, what kind of nothing did Joe talk about?
Wait, why are you so concerned about
really
it?
remember.
No, I mean, did he talk about the
I wasn't
ADA
here.
Golden case or the Russian diamond smuggling case?
Let me hang on, before you guys get into this, I just want to say, if you guys want to take a break, or, I mean, I think if you want to go across the street.
Yeah, I'm going to go out and smoke.
Oh,
I'm going to show up with all my
the reason I want
vices,
to
and I
finish
can
this
pull in
out
Berkeley.
is Joe Davidson was the guy who